All right, welcome to the Culture Couch Live, another special edition for the very reason I've got my partners Emil and Jerry.
How are you, mate?
Guys? But Woz is unavailable today, and this is the second time we've invited one of our sort of key execs along to have a bit of a discussion on the Culture Couch. So, Maling Harper, welcome to the Culture Couch, and thanks for giving us your time.
Thanks for the invite.
Morning,
All right, well, it's going to be some hard-hitting questions, so I hope you're ready. All right, let's start off with Maria here. So, again, they're all very topical, but this is, I suppose, going to happen a lot of business across Australia with COVID and with the change. We've had to rejig our organisation. We're joining two teams to become one team. How do I join those teams together effectively? And as I said, you know, it's probably going to happen a lot coming out of COVID, probably particularly moving into 2021. And I know, Maling, you've had a lot of changes in your business. So what have you found in relation to that, sort of bringing those two teams together? Or I suppose some of those people have been made redundant. So it's not even the full team. It's sort of half a team coming together with another half a team, streamlining the business. What are your recommendations and perhaps some of the things that you've had to do, Maling?
Yeah, so I've recently had to merge two divisions together. So I was looking after one division, which had a number of people, and two divisions have merged, which come under my remit now. And we're all part of the same company. The culture is very similar. But what's been really interesting is that when you're with an existing team, you build certain behaviours and a culture, and even if team is just sitting over there and they're part of the same business which has the same philosophies and we operate in the same system, there's just subtle differences. You don't realise all the hard work you've done, and you kind of just need to start again. So I think in terms of the culture side of things, it was about recognising which parts of the culture are the same and really highlighting those and using those and bringing those to the forefront. So, for example, something like reward and recognition is a big thing within the business I work in, and that it's a big part of what we do in the original team that I managed. But it was also a big part. So making sure that was brought into every single meeting we had, because it was familiar. And learning how Team 2 manages reward and recognition versus Team 1 is slightly different, but it's the same thing. So using that as a way to draw people together. And then probably the other thing is I feel like it's probably been 3 or 4 months now since I've had these two teams together, and I feel like I've just gotten to the point where I'm starting to make headway. And I think what I did at the start was really overcomplicate things. I tried to figure out how to join these different systems and get all these different things happening. But it was probably a couple of months in that I realised that there was still a bit of friction because the guys didn't know each other properly, and COVID and working from home. And actually, we ended up doing this planning day, which was all done via Zoom. But the biggest hit on the day was not anything talking about businesses, how we can, join KPIs and stuff. It was actually around, I got them in pairs, and they had to tell each other what they were like as a teenager. And then they just had an open conversation about what they were like as a kid. And from then on, things have that trust, getting to know each other personally thing that I should have just done from the start.
Yeah, I reckon it's a great way for you to pick it up, Murph, because a lot of stuff that we're doing revolves around relationships, isn't it? And it's having the conversation. There's probably a number of components around it too, isn't there? A lot of stuff we're talking about is how siloed people get. So the importance of not getting too siloed is a real, but have the conversation, build the relationships. And I think that's really integral in bringing those teams together, Murph, isn't it?
Yeah, I think, excuse me, I think there's a couple of really interesting things that you mentioned there, Maling. I think the first one is to keep it simple. So don't overcomplicate it, because you've been doing a lot of work with your teams. They've got a really clear understanding of the behaviours and what's acceptable or not. So integrating the groups together to marry that up and making it clear what's acceptable or not going forward, I think is really important. So allow the group to have that say, and then keep it simple so that everyone's across it. Because I think the risk is, if you bring two groups together, they've got different values and behaviours, and you're trying to sort of marry them in, but not stepping back and taking the time to sort of get clarity about what are we going to look like going forward, means that it takes a long time for people to sort of come together. There's a lot of butting of heads and things. And then to your point, Reezy, and Maling's point about the relationship piece, like understanding where each person's coming from, getting to know each other is so important, because there will be some difficult times when you're bringing teams together about what's acceptable or not, and how do you manage that? And if you haven't got good relationships and you don't know where each person is from a mental health perspective as well, it makes it difficult to hold people to account.
Yeah.
So understanding where everyone sits, building good relationships with each other, means that you can then have those conversations and keep rewarding the good behaviour, but also remember, unacceptable behaviour is still unacceptable behaviour. And so helping and supporting people through that and getting them back into what's acceptable or not for us as a team through your reward and recognition, Maling, is so important. So yeah, it's a really fascinating time for people bringing new people together from previously separate teams into the one team.
Yeah. Emil, I remember a really good workshop we did. It's a slightly different scenario, but similar. It was when, I won't mention the company's name, but one company had bought another company. Remember, they all came together at the Docklands and had a conversation around both their cultures.
Yeah.
And with them, we came to an agreement on what their new culture looked like.
Yeah.
And to Maling's point, really simple, great conversation, but extremely productive.
Yeah. Yeah. The first things I wrote down here was give time. There's got to be time for people to have and build the relationships, and be quite intentional about it with the and a teenager. You could wrap so many questions around what were you like as a teenager. Tell us about your family and their best strength and their weakness, and your favorite music event you've been to. That you can go all over the place with a simple tell a story about yourself. And another tip around that, when I used to work with Jez a lot, we used to play the interview game. So I might interview you, Milling, and then you interview me around the questions, but then you would present me to the group, and I would do the same. So this is my new best friend, Milling, and this is her family and all that sort of stuff. So the time factor to build those relationships is extraordinarily important, and to Jez's point as well, in conjunction with standards. So let's get to know each other, but also have the conversation on how we're going to hold each other accountable, and what are those behaviours that we agree to support each other on, and the ones we agree we're going to hold each other accountable to. So I'm basically saying what you guys already said, because it's so true.
Yeah, I think the main thing is just don't think it's going to happen. Some sort of effort. It's not just going to happen. Yeah. Because you're going to have there's two slightly, even in the closest of companies, isn't it? There's two slightly different ways they do things. So you're going to have those conversations. That's the main thing. So great advice. Next one's from Peter. Well, this is actually quite topical based on the draft that just happened. I'm a Collingwood supporter and a leader of a business. I was shocked to hear Buckley hadn't spoken to any of the players. Isn't the leader's job to communicate when good and bad? So just to put that into context for people that don't understand. So there's just been a recent trade period. 3 players from Collingwood have been traded. Nathan Buckley's the coach of the Collingwood Football Club. And we hear from Jaden Stevenson, one of the boys who was traded, and he actually had to ring Nathan to find out that he was going to be traded. So let's use that as the basis for our question, but park it a little bit, because we don't necessarily know what's happened inside the Collingwood Football Club. But clearly, as a leader, I think what is being said is, good or bad, that leader, Emil, has to give that information.
Yeah.
You know, now it's a lot harder through COVID and big companies, small companies, et cetera, but I probably tend to agree. In some way, shape or form, the leader has to reach out, good or bad.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look, I'm going to put my hand up. That was my big challenge as a leader going through the process in the early days of my other company. It's, you know, you only really want to share the good information, don't you? But the reality is you're actually breaching a lot of safety and trust when you withhold. And in that story, Jaden even called him up and he said, oh, yeah, we're thinking about it. Like, it wasn't even a done deal. It was the thinking about it. And he held him off for 3 weeks. And the longer that you carry it on, the deeper the trust bank gets depleted. So, you know, we talk a lot about don't let the small things become big things, and little and often it really, I listened to that podcast or whatever it was, and it really shocked me. I was quite disappointed that I heard that, but you've got to, I think, have systems in place that catches it before it becomes something that it shouldn't be, because I think he's lost a lot of, you know, it's trust out of that situation. But that's one of those situations where he let a small thing become, and it's reality. The reality of business and the reality of trading and all that is that you're going to get moved around and all that sort of stuff. But you've got to lean into it as soon as it comes up. And I'm putting my hand up that that's something I still struggle with today. But Peter's exactly right. It should have been a conversation way before it actually happened, for sure.
I mean, if you've been involved in footy for a long period of time and business as well, and I know you get a bit frustrated when leaders don't have those difficult conversations, because to Emil's point, if you don't, you can create a much bigger problem than is already there when you address it face to face. So it might be a difficult one difficult conversation. If you don't address it, it might become 10 difficult conversations as a result of it.
Yeah, I don't know the story, to be honest. I don't read the sport media at all. So I genuinely can't comment. I hadn't heard about it till you just asked that question then. So there's a couple of things though. The first thing is you do need to have those difficult conversations, and I'm not really sure why it did or didn't happen. But putting in place that, again, we'll keep saying this, and it sounds a bit boring sometimes, is that putting in place systems and processes that enable you to have these conversations when they count. Now, sometimes it will be difficult, particularly in a big company. So I don't know how Maling will answer this, but, you know, sometimes big companies have got, over the last 6 months, have had to put lots of people off quickly. And so therefore actually physically doing that has almost been impossible. But where you can, having that conversation face to face is so important because it shows care. But fundamentally, the most important people to you at this point are the people that are staying in the company.
Yeah.
And so when they see you treating people exiting well, it makes them feel good. And it gives them safety, and it gives them trust in the organization and the leadership of the organization. So my advice to any leader that is having to let staff go, just be really mindful of the fact that the rest of the people that are staying are watching how you do that. And that will build, as I said, leadership, trust with you as a leader. It will build commitment to the team and to the organization if you handle that well.
Yep.
And you know, with having said all that, sometimes people leave organizations disaffected and will speak badly about it. But the people who are behind, if they know how you did it and they know you did it well, will go, okay, well, that's just how he or she left. So communicate clearly and well when you can, absolutely. And remember that the rest of the org is watching, and tell them how you handled it. Because if you assume that people know that you handled it a certain way, then you're leaving it to chance. And again, we'll keep saying it. Don't leave your culture to chance. Keep communicating. So I don't know if that answers the question, Rizzy. It's sort of...
Yeah, no, 100%. I don't think we need to get into the specifics of Collingwood because we don't know what's happening at the Collingwood Football Club, and we can hear and read things. But I think what we want to relate it to is just the leadership in general. And I think you made the point there. We talk about leaders being watched all the time, Maling. Everything you do as a leader is watched. When you walk into a room, how you talk in a meeting, even over a cup of coffee when someone else in the office is watching you. And I think Murph made a really, really good point. It's not just the person that's exiting, because they're literally probably not going to come back again. Important, very important the way you do that, but it's also how it impacts people internally. And I suppose, being a big company that you are, and an unusual situation in COVID, I think we have to put that out, where you probably had a lot of redundancies. How important is it for the leader, from your point of view, to try and give that information when possible?
It's just so important, and it's been such a challenging time for everyone, and especially for our business. But I might talk to the communication bit, because when you guys were speaking, I was thinking about many examples I've come across. So I manage leaders who lead other people, and I also work with leaders, and there's just tens and tens of times that other leaders have come to me and said, I'm having this problem. This is what I'm thinking. I don't know how to handle it. And like 9 times out of 10, the advice that I give is go and have a chat to that person and let them know how you're feeling, and why, and phrase it in a way that you're concerned because of how it's making you feel. And then come back to me and let me know, are you okay to have that conversation and do that as a person? Every single time, as long as it's a question, every single time. And I think what I see, what I'm kind of reflecting on now is that I think everyone's just scared of confrontation, even very senior leaders. So you've just got to have the conversation, and again, 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10, it fixes it. And 9 times out of 10, it goes 100 times better than they thought it was going to. They expected. So it's never as bad as the conversation. And, this is probably the same conversation I have with myself internally as well. What should I do? Oh, I should actually just go and talk to that person. But I think that it's human nature to not want to talk about the bad stuff. And in my organisation, we're really great at high-fiving and recognition and telling people when they've done a good job, but probably culturally we're not as good, and you guys have worked with us, we're not as good at having the conversation when things aren't going so well, or we fluff it up and we talk about the things that are, even if everything else is going badly. So, it's, there's nothing, you just have to have the conversation.
Yeah. And Rosie, can I just jump in there? It's I'm reading a really good book at the minute called The Core Value Equation.
Yeah.
And we talk about values all the time. It's a really good test for your values.
Yeah.
Are they right or not? But just keep going back to your values and they will tell you what to do. And if they don't give you the answer, well then you've got the wrong values. But the truth about it is, if you've got the right values and you keep going back to them and saying, what would a respectful, honest,
united,
do? As the Milling says, okay, I've got to go and have that conversation. And that is the reason we have values, because they'll guide us in these difficult times.
It's a great way to finish. I think the combination of what Milling said, have the conversation. You have to have the conversation.
Yep.
And if you want to be that company that you've created that set of values, you have to anyway. So they actually go hand in hand. So you actually, by not having it, you're going against everything you want to stand for as an individual, everything you want to stand for as a company. So as difficult as it is, and none of us naturally certainly we don't like trading a player. I've done it before. We don't like getting rid of a staff member or whatever. It's a really difficult thing to do. But if we want to protect our personal brand, if we want to protect the company brand, as Meling said, you just have to do it.
Yeah.
Great way to wrap it up. Meling, fantastic.
Great session. Thanks, Meling.
The Culture Couch Live, we really appreciate it. And to Murph, Emil, everyone, have a great weekend. We'll see you again next time on the Culture Couch Live.
See you guys.
Thanks, guys.
Congratulations to Joe Biden.